Hello, Linguafolio online users, and welcome to our module about gathering evidence to upload to Linguafolio Online. In this module, we will begin by orienting viewers as to where gathering evidence is in the Linguafolio Online cycle of implementation. Then, we will discuss how to truly unlock the potential of LFO in your classrooms with regards to gathering evidence. An essential component of unlocking said potential is creating a proficiency-based classroom. Thus, we will discuss what a proficiency-based classroom is. After that discussion, we will dissect an example classroom activity that promotes functional language use and is perfect for collecting evidence to upload to LFO. Then, we will give an example of an entire class period that is devoted to functional language use. As has already been mentioned, today's module is largely focused on creating a proficiency-based classroom and documenting evidence of students' progress towards increasing their personal proficiencies in their target language. Essentially, if a world language classroom allows students to engage in functional language use, the classroom will be ripe with student evidence exemplifying mastery of given can-do statements, especially when functional language use is attached to a meaningful concept or context. Now let's consider the Linguafolio Online cycle of implementation. We will touch a bit on selecting focused can-do statements today. However, the meat of what we do will be focused on designing tasks and activities to help students to meet the targets set forth by the can-do statements, and helping students to select evidence to showcase their work at various stages in the process. Before we go any further, we must discuss how to make Linguafolio Online a meaningful tool in the classroom. The first component in making Linguafolio Online meaningful with regards to gathering evidence for upload is to be consistent with its implementation. Given that LFO engages the learners in self-reflection and provides educators with an efficient feedback mechanism for their learners are much more likely to improve their respective target language proficiencies if they are creating evidence, reflecting on their success with regards to the evidence, and uploading evidence to their portfolios on a regular basis. The second step in making LFO meaningful with regards to gathering evidence has already been alluded to, and that is the step of making sure that it is truly used as a formative tool. A common misconception of Linguafolio Online is that it should be used in a summative nature. However, its potential power lies in the consistency of reflection and feedback that was already discussed. In this sense, uploading more evidence to LFO heightens the ability of learners to understand their growth towards specific targets and to set subsequent targets for growth. In order to ensure the consistency and formative nature of Linguafolio Online, we recommend using our mobile app, LFO To Go. This app simplifies the process of uploading evidence because it allows learners to not only capture photo, video, and audio files on their mobile devices, but to also immediately upload evidence to their portfolios and engage in self-reflection without having to transfer any files to a computer. While all of the recommendations on the previous slide are important, none of them matter without designing a proficiency-based classroom. In such a classroom, learners focus on learning to use language and not just on learning about language. This classroom employs functional language use that is exemplified by targeting can-do statements on a consistent basis. It is important that this classroom also offers learners multiple opportunities to practice their targeted language functions and to reflect on their growth in meeting these targets. This reflection requires multiple engagements in self-assessment. And finally, in the proficiency-based classroom, teachers provide feedback regarding their learners' development towards proficiency goals. The more often that learners upload evidence to Linguafolio Online, the more often it is that educators will be able to provide this meaningful feedback. Here is an example of how one might plan what can-do statements to focus on in a unit of study. This example was taken from the unit planner that we have created that is featured in the Educator's Toolbox in the Teacher Welcome Packet at lfonetwork.uoregon.edu. Notice that every day in class has targeted can-do statements and activities designed to help learners to meet those targets. While this plan does not ignore necessary grammar and vocabulary instruction, it is predominantly focused on building the language proficiency of learners. The speed dating activity mentioned at the end of the second day featured will be our focus for the next part of this module so that we can exemplify a proficiency-based activity that one might use in order for students to produce evidence that could be uploaded onto Linguafolio online. This activity is especially good because it gives the students the opportunity to capture evidence multiple times. Now it is time to discuss an example class activity that would generate evidence for learners to upload to Linguafolio online. This activity and all of its resources are available to you at lfonetwork.uoregon.edu in the Teacher Welcome Packet under the Educator Toolkit. This activity is one that was designed for novice learners but can be easily tailored to more advanced learners by changing the topic being discussed to something that would require more diverse and advanced language. In order to complete this activity, learners will engage in speed dating. As a pre-speaking activity and to provide scaffolding to learners who struggle, learners will brainstorm questions that one should ask upon meeting someone for the first time. Learners will also fill out an informational sheet in the target language about themselves. Then they will rate how well they think that they can perform the targeted can-do statements for the activity. After that, the speed dating will commence and learners will speak with 7 to 10 class members. It is important that educators use this first round of speed dating interviews as an opportunity to give the class global feedback regarding their success in asking and telling introductory information. Next, learners will fill out an additional informational sheet about an alternate personality. They will use that information in the second round of interviews. This second round of interviews will be recorded, and learners will get to choose the interviews that they want to upload as evidence on Linguafolio online. So that you know what the students will be sharing with one another, here is the informational handout that the students fill out. Here is the part of the handout in which learners evaluate how well they think they can perform the targeted language functions. Finally, here are some follow-up questions for the learners to consider before they upload their evidence to Linguafolio online so that they have a good idea of how they want to self-evaluate their success. The more that teachers are able to get students to think critically about their skills and identify language functions that they are capable of doing, the more likely it is that learners will increase their proficiency within the walls of the World Language classroom. Now that you have an idea of an activity that might be used to collect evidence from learners, here is an overview of an entire class period in a proficiency-based classroom. This class period occurred less than a month after school started and was planned for novice French learners in an accelerated 2-year course called French Ab Initio. This class was one of the last days of the students' first unit, a unit designed to get students thinking about their respective identities as reflected through their likes, families, and friends. In this particular class period, students were always engaged in functional language use, with the only direct grammar and vocabulary instruction coming from corrective feedback. Within this 60-minute class period, learners had at least 12 opportunities to collect evidence that could be uploaded to Linguafolio online. In the next slides, you will see the activities that most heavily contributed to these opportunities. The class began with students writing a photo description of 3 friends on bicycles. First, learners worked individually to write a description about the friends. Relevant can-do statements for this activity come from presentational writing and are in the Novice Mid and Novice Advanced range. The most relevant can-do statements include, I can describe my family and friends, I can describe what my family and friends do, and most notably, I can write about a topic from a lesson using pictures or photos. In a similar activity with multiple relevant can-do statements, learners may choose to use what they wrote as evidence for one of the can-do statements or for all of them. Next, learners were instructed to work together to make improvements to their work. These improvements had to be marked in another color. While it was acceptable for learners to focus on improving language mechanics, most of the improvements were more directly related to improving meaning making and included things like adding details such as age, time frame, personality descriptions, and level appropriate justifications to the claims in their work. At this point, learners could choose to upload their improved work as additional evidence to Linguafolio Online. If your class has a similar opportunity to engage in peer review and upload improved evidence, it is important to have students remember when they self-evaluate that they might need to select Can Do with Help based on how much input they receive from their peers. Another major activity in the classroom involved learners bridging from talking solely about others to talking about themselves by creating the movie poster of their lives. Here is an example of the poster created by one of the students in which he discusses what he likes to do and when he normally engages in those activities. The can-do statements most directly related to this activity include, I can write about what happens after school or during the weekend, and I can write a short announcement, card, or thank you note. Again, after completing this activity, learners could choose to use this piece of evidence for one of the aforementioned can-do statements or for both of them. A final powerful part of the class was the closing discussion. In this discussion, learners were to share their movie posters and to reflect upon how well they were able to describe their lives and their activities. This reflection is essential for learners to engage in before self-evaluating when uploading their evidence to Linguafolio Online. Another benefit of ending a class in this way is that teachers are able to gauge how well their learners are able to achieve can-do statements before even looking at the evidence. In closing, we would like to emphasize again that students will get the most out of Linguafolio Online if it is woven into the fabric of the classroom. It should be a consistent formative feedback and self-reflection tool. Here we have shown you how to use Linguafolio Online with consistency. While students certainly do not have to create evidence to upload to Linguafolio Online every day, the possibility exists to do just that in a proficiency-based language classroom. Also, learning about language is important and should not be ignored. However, when we don't give students the opportunity to use language, to wrestle with it, to struggle with it, and to excel in their quest to make meaning with it, we are not growing our students into communicators of the target language. Finally, when learners are considering evidence to upload to LFO, remind them that they should not be limited by a one can-do statement to one piece of evidence ratio. A good proficiency-based task can absolutely serve as evidence for multiple can-do statements. Feel free to send us an email at lfolio@uoregon.edu. Thank you for all that you do for students.